Hello and welcome to the Claw.
Good evening, everyone.
In case you couldn't,
Heyo.
if you couldn't hear that person, she said good evening.
They could hear me.
um, so, everybody introduce themselves. I'm Sparks. I am the resident cynic and doomer.
Fuck, I have to come up with like a tagline after
You don't have to come up with shit. You're an independent woman.
Alright, I'm Maddie and I'm an independent woman.
You just said what I said.
I'm Charleston Chew, no relation to the Candy Bar Man. I'm here to party.
All right, Charleston, I'm glad we have you on the line. People are asking questions now. Why did you ignore safety regulations at the Charleston Chew factory that led to literally hundreds of thousands of deaths?
I said no relation.
That is a non-answer, sir. Send this man to The Hague for big boy crabs. Yes, this is The Claw. I'm off screen. This is The Claw, the culture, language, and art of the worker podcast. Today, we're not going to be talking about maybe culture, but any of that. We're going to be talking about labor for the most part, and the current crisis that we're in, and what this looks like. Maybe like right now, but also going forward, as as private capital continues to liquidate labor, and we find out exactly how many of our jobs are coming back, for instance.
Or not coming back.
Or not coming back, yes. But also like where these shifts in the economy were going to be. We actually have a call right now. Let's answer that. We'll be right back. I can hear you. Hang on. All right. Back with us again is Matt. What ridiculous thing did you want me to call you again?
We can just go with Matt. That's fine.
All right, that alone
That's
is ridiculous.
enough.
Yeah, exactly. That's a
If nobody
hilarious name.
remembers it from last week, then it's not worth remembering. It's fine.
It's worth remembering.
I remember, but we'll keep it simple.
Excuse me.
I promise next time I'll come prepared with a better nickname.
All right, yeah. If anyone has any suggestions what we should call Matt other than whatever boring biblical name he's trying to pass on us right now, we're
Well,
open
you
to
want to
it.
hear a funny story happened last week?
Yes.
We had 3 mats on the job site. Maybe it was like 2 or 3 weeks ago. 3 mats and 3 Scots at the same time on the same job site. That's only like a couple thousand square feet.
3
So
men
every time
named
somebody
Scott or 3 Scotsmen?
no, 3 guys named Scott and 3 guys named Matt. So it got really confusing really quickly. So the plumber, Matt, asked me what my last name was because he was going to call me by my last name. And I said, Master, just because I wanted somebody to call me Master. Just for a minute. It didn't work. He saw right through it. But
Yeah. he
You
didn't
look like
believe.
He didn't start calling you master.
Nobody wants to call anybody master except for people in very freaky, kinky, specific scenarios.
or really, really racist, like Southern Alabama. Because yes, Master, that's very common, like still to this day.
Well, I think that's more ironic. I don't think they're actually using it with deference. Anyway,
Let's hope.
so something, we'd like to hear anything you have on your mind, but kind of what we're going to be talking about tonight a little bit is the current situation we're in. And how it relates, especially to very, I don't know, like culturally, if not economically relevant trades, specifically things like construction, manufacturing, also because they kind of are intertwined. But since we both work in construction, I figure it was good to talk about what that's going to look like in 6 months, a year, 18 months. And the kind of specific issues there, not only right now but going forward, and how we can kind of mitigate some of those maybe. And you might have different opinions than I do, but also I'm going to go over some basic political economy stuff, and if there's something I'm being too kind of if I don't make sense, please ask me to clarify. And if you get bored, just hang up on me.
I did that twice already. I'm sorry.
All right.
Honestly, the future is the most uncertain thing for all of us, and like who the hell can project anything further than the next week? I mean, for the last 3 weeks, everybody's been complaining that it keeps changing every day, and that hasn't stopped yet. It changed yesterday, and it's going to change again tomorrow. Who the hell's making projections?
What?
Nobody's even bothering.
Are you talking about projections with the disease?
With the construction industry with regards to the disease and
Yes.
how
Okay.
far it's going to change. Here's one example is I live in Maine and I work in New Hampshire. Nobody knows when they're going to shut down that border. They were just granted federal emergency act. I want to say Friday, Saturday. And so now the government certainly have the power to shut down the border from either side. So I don't know if I'm allowed to cross the border and go to work anymore, or if I have to stay on unemployment that hasn't paid me anything yet because they're so backlogged, or if according to New Hampshire's stay-at-home mandate, construction in general, just the word construction is considered essential. So according to New Hampshire, I'm allowed to go to New Hampshire, but in Maine, they classify it. They make the distinction of construction related to infrastructure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is not multi-million-dollar additions.
It's not residential construction for the most part, right?
Yeah.
Or even commercial, I suppose, within reason.
So yeah, in North Conway, they're still building that hotel. They're
Right.
progressing on L.A. Drew's project up in Intervale.
Yeah.
I don't know what that's supposed to be. I haven't heard yet, but they poured the foundation. They had Coleman's out there, the concrete trucks, excavators, everything was still going on. So, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that's still progressing. I've heard from guys that we were going to hire to do some work for us, a couple months ago, and we're trying to schedule out, 2 months ahead. calls. I'm so busy. Forget about me. Now they're calling us back. Like, all those other jobs were for, huge contractors from Massachusetts, and I don't want to work on their jobs anymore. Can I come work for you now?
Yeah.
That makes me wonder when are we breaking this whole stay-at-home thing? Because I understand the fear. All their subcontractors, all the plumbers, all the electricians, everybody's from Massachusetts. They're not allowed to work at all in Massachusetts. They're totally shut down.
Yeah.
And so all these jobs that they had in New Hampshire that these guys were supposed to go to, they don't want to go to anymore, and they're piling, 3 electricians, 2 plumbers, and a carpenter in every closet, which is wildly violating any social distancing recognition. It's out of control, wildly irresponsible, and a lot of guys are bailing out, and they're calling us, because we're trying to take it seriously.
Right. That's something I want to.
In Lysol and Purell, and we're screwing up our schedule on every job we have. So we recognize a process called the chase, where if anybody, any sub in any phase of the construction process can get in and do any significant work at all, you pile them in there.
Yeah.
Call them up, you stand on their necks, you electrician, plumber, drywaller, get in there. I don't care if you can only do half what you got to do. Force them in.
Right.
And that's how you keep the schedule progressing aggressively. And that's what we're really known for. We push people on top of each other all the time. And now, in the last, I want to say 3 weeks, maybe a month, has been like one sub at a time. The drywall guy comes in, he does everything. The trim guy comes in, he does everything. The plumber comes in, he does everything. Only one sub at a time to try to mitigate any spread. It's a wildly different world. I'm kind of a newer supervisor. I'm not used to trying to manipulate the schedule like that. I'm used to trying to shove everybody in at the same time. So it's a whole new world for us to try to get used to. And it's really difficult. We had drywall guys come up today. They aren't taking this seriously enough. And I had to kind of coach them. I'm like, I'm not going to touch your stuff. You're not going to touch my stuff. There's a bottle of hand sanitizer right there. There's some Lysol. You hit the door handle on the way out. If you use the bathroom, you sanitize your hands. And we'll wipe down the door handle after you. It's like,
right.
I got to coach these guys that just aren't taking it seriously.
Yeah, see, that's something I want to talk about mainly. It's not. I don't know if it's an accelerated risk or a heightened risk over some other industries, but it's certainly in our industry. There's kind of 2 things. One, this kind of culture of like the tough guy culture of like, I'm gonna come in. I don't know if it's I'm generalizing too broadly there, but for lack of a better term, let's call it tough guy culture, where it's like
Everybody still alone.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna come in if I'm sick or not. I'm gonna work no matter how bad I feel. I'm gonna, even if I'm supposed to be careful about A, B, and C, I'm not going to because it's easier, or that's for wimps, or I'm not scared of blah blah blah.
Dude, you should know
Combined with
exactly.
Go ahead.
I work with so many people that have the same mentality as Boris Johnson or Trump, and I'm not going to
licking everybody's palms.
I've been shaking everybody's hands like crazy.
Yeah.
I've been sneezing in people's mouths. I don't give a shit. And everybody had that mentality, a month ago, where it's like, well, we're not scared of the flu so much. Why are we scared about this bullshit?
Yeah.
And to get people to grasp how different this situation is from what they think it is, you have to start taking drastic measures like shutting down schools and making these big moves. I'm so glad I'm not a legislator or a senator or a governor or some shit like that has to make these decisions that really, really fuck up people's lives, and that's how you get people's attention.
Yeah.
And that's how you care about the coronavirus, and now everybody, even like some of the really zealous Trump supporters that I work with, are kind of like, yeah, why don't you stay over there?
Yeah, well,
Don't stay over here.
But even when it first started, like when they closed all the schools, people didn't really take it seriously then. Like, you know, everyone was like, okay, play dates, let's all go out, and what can we do together?
yeah.
Yeah, let's invite more kids.
Yeah.
That's all I want.
Well, you know, there are cultural systems kind of behind that that are going to pervade any crisis. But the other thing I was going to ask relating to that, or maybe propose, is like, how easy is it? Because it's, I would say, in my experience, it's damn near impossible to even remotely clean a job site, like disinfect wise. In terms of this, you can sweep it or whatever, you can make it look orderly, but to not only disinfect but to keep it like operationally secure. Um,
So that's the trade-off that we've had to suffer. Like I explained earlier, the schedule has to suffer in order to keep people safe. The other thing that has to suffer is productivity and proficiency. We spend probably an hour and a half or 2 hours a day disinfecting everything.
right.
My hammer and drill have never smelled so Lysol like spring fresh. Like
Yeah.
we go crazy. We spray everything down. You wipe it down either with the disinfecting wipes or the sprays. And my hands have never been so soft and supple because of so much Purell and hand sanitizer. Like 15 times a day, no joke.
Right.
Like
With the productivity, I mean, I know this is kind of speculating here, but with that kind of loss of productivity, do you think you can keep going doing this same kind of process, this new process, going forward for 18 months, let's say?
the way we have offered it to the homeowners that want to keep going with their projects, and they want their additions and garages and lake houses, and they're $2 million.
Yeah, are they home, by the way? Are some of these, I mean, you don't have to snitch if you don't want to.
I counted out of the 15 projects that we have, a record high of 5 are home.
Okay.
Usually, these people are out in New York and California, wherever the hell they are, and that this is their vacation home on Guam or in Jackson or whatever the luxury house we're building.
Yeah, these wealthier areas.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and they're usually never there, and it in that respect, it makes it kind of a pain in the ass because they're not around. You can't say, "Hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about that?" So
Yeah.
it's easier because hey, come step 15 feet outside your door and take a look at this and make a decision.
Yeah.
And that aspect is easier, but for the most part, it's more difficult because I can't walk in the living room. I have to ring the doorbell, wait for them to come outside. We only have outside, project management meetings. It's a pain in the ass. But yeah, the way we offer to them is if you want to keep going, and all of them do, because they're not hurting that bad in the stock market yet, where they want to, hold up production on their luxury vacation home. They all want to keep going, and we tell them, well, it's just gonna cost you more. It's the way it is. Like we're still gonna charge you for every hour that we're here,
Right.
and you're still gonna pay it, and it's gonna take you a lot more hours to get to where we would be. Not to mention a lot more months. We've added months, plural, to every schedule that we have going.
Yeah.
And those are still like guesstimate projections. Like we thought it was gonna take 6 months to do this X amount of work. Let's call it 10. And we have no idea. We have no control over the material delivery. We have no control over the subs that are going to show up or not. We rented a steel container in order to order all the material that we can for every job that we can. Vanities and faucets and door handles and light bulbs for every project that we got on the books right now. To pile it up at the barn, even though we haven't even broke ground on a lot of these places, we've ordered every part and piece that we can imagine just to make sure that when we're ready for it, it's there. In case the waiting for vanities and cabinets from Cabico. They're a huge national chain, and they shut down their New Jersey plant, so we can't get anything that we had ordered, a couple of weeks ago. It's they're just not even promising a date. They're like, it's not in production. We don't know when it's going to start production.
Right.
Take your money back.
Yeah.
And so we did. We started making a lot of that stuff in our own cabinet shop, but that overloads our cabinet shop, which only has 3 guys, which really don't want to be that close to each other to begin with. With a
Yeah.
bunch of material that's
So there are
piling up
kind of
that
downstream trade-offs with that then,
you really can't win.
Yeah.
'Cause
Well,
now
are
they're
you...
getting all this extra material and supplies from people that may or may not be wearing gloves and respirators,
Wow.
and may or may not be wearing, using Perel.
Or covering their cough.
Yeah, they're just dropping shit off, and covered in snot. You don't know, and
Right.
you
Well,
leave
also,
on the loading
like,
dock for 3 or 4 days, and hopefully maybe it's dry now. I don't know.
more on the economic side, too, is that's all just debt sitting there, right? Like,
Yes, and it's directly passed off to the homeowners, which in this case I don't feel so bad for them because they're friggin' loaded.
they want to
And
build a house in a global
Yeah,
pandemic.
during that
yeah,
time.
and they could write off 100% of what we've ordered ahead of time and
Yeah.
what we've put in for labor.
So are you billing that to them directly, or is that your debt that you're sitting on until you can bill them for it, is more what I'm asking?
So there's the fun part. We bill them for it, and maybe they pay it, maybe they don't.
Right. Yeah. See, that's
Yeah.
that's what I'm concerned about, is if a lot of these companies do something like that, which in a way is smart, or reasonable, and then demand begins to dry up, either organically or either due to things like you can't build anymore. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's outlawed. Let's say, not
The Fed
outlawed,
might
but
actually say, no, you put your hammer down, go home.
right,
Yeah.
exactly. And that, because of that demand dry up, you're just sitting on all that debt for who knows how long. And this kind of ties into something, I'm concerned about, in the not just in the projections of the trades, but also like largely in the economy. Is especially when it comes to like smaller business. I don't know about smaller businesses, but like all businesses right now are overburdened with debt. And then this, what I would say is an endogenous shock, like it's an internal shock to the system, within the system, um, is causing a rise in the amount of debt they have to hold on to. Except for whatever companies are going to be able to access this multi-trillion slush fund here,
Yeah.
which won't be companies like we work for the most part.
Well, I don't mean to interject, but as I understand it, the only part that companies like we work for get is payroll protection plan.
Right, exactly. And you can't lay off any workers to be able to access that. They all have to be furloughed, essentially. You have to keep paying them through your payroll.
Right, so that gets me off of unemployment, which has so far screwed me out of 2 weeks worth of 30% of my pay.
Right.
Which I haven't paid my mortgage yet this month.
Yeah.
I'm 7 days behind now, and the money isn't there, and nobody's giving it to me, and until this payroll protection plan comes through or unemployment catches up to the agreeably outrageous influx of people applying.
Yeah. Are you applying in your state or in New Hampshire?
So because my employer is in New Hampshire, they've been paying into the unemployment insurance in New Hampshire.
So you got to go through New Hampshire.
So it doesn't matter where you live and where you work.
Right.
It's all about where you file.
Yeah.
And as long as
Okay.
you file and were previously employed by an employer in that state, then that's where you file. Even if you got fired because of this whole thing, and I know a couple of guys, inflation guys, spray foam guys, they were just straight up fired. They're like, you know what, you're done, you're out of here. They got rid of their riffraff and passed them off on the unemployment insurance program because of the benefits that the Fed is giving. The kind of cheesy
Yeah.
on that, and it's kind of a free ride. Because you get rid of those guys, they're still getting benefits to keep their business open, and they don't have to pay unemployment insurance premiums every time somebody applies for unemployment insurance from their business. So every time if you quit today and applied for unemployment insurance, then they have to help pay some of your benefits until you get a job. Likewise, if they fire you, they have to pay more.
Right. Well, it's charged out of your account that you pay into essentially as an employer in the state.
Right.
And if you pay out a certain amount, or if you're charged against a certain amount in a certain amount of time, your tax rate essentially goes up. Your unemployment tax rate goes up, but it's very marginal anyway. It's only like, I don't know, like 1.1% or something up to the first 14,000 somebody makes. It's very, because it's an austerity program. It's not meant to be well funded, and it's not meant to take care of people on it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So, well, that's the rumor I heard on the street.
Yeah, well, I
And,
mean, a
again,
lot of places.
I was off the street for 2 weeks there.
Yeah.
But I will say you can't quit and get it, because like I know a lot of people in like the food service industry who would like to be quarantining at home, but they can't quit because they won't get unemployment, and they're like if their place of employment is still open and offering them hours, they have to work.
Yeah.
Oh, that
So
could
you
be
have to
tricky.
be fired or laid off,
Yeah.
or just lose enough hours.
It's that
Or
catch
get a
22.
doctor's note,
Yeah.
which you have to suffer for, so that's not really worth it either. But
Right.
the other thing, as I understand, the provision they gave in the last bill they passed was, or the last 15 fucking bills they passed. I don't know how many they passed. But a buddy of mine that I work with, of course, the school shut down. His wife has to work. She's a healthcare worker, and he has to stay home with the kid because he can't find a babysitter.
Yeah.
So for childcare purposes, you can
Right.
apply for
Yeah.
unemployment.
Right. I mean, they expanded the definitions for sure. But even people who are not even necessarily gig workers, but like, even as much as they're talking about the supports for the self-employed and stuff like that, I mean, it's, they're basically pulling this new classification out of their butts and just promising it's going to work. So there's going to be a lot of people that get left behind in this ultimately. And it seems like, from what I've heard from the Labor Department of New Hampshire, that this $600 extra benefit isn't going to be paid out until people will begin to see it in their unemployment checks on the 14th, the next time they pay out, essentially. So, I mean, that's if you're in the boat like a lot of us are in, where you haven't paid your mortgage yet. I mean, that's cutting it awful close.
Yeah.
Thankfully, I'm only the first month into not paying my mortgage, and it takes forever for, even under normal circumstances, it takes 3 months or more for them to, try to take the place out from underneath me. So.
Right, but even if you don't lose your house, there are other things. There's late fees. There's all sorts of
the interest and the late fees.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Right.
That's what we're fearing, but I mean, it hasn't happened yet. From what I read just before I got on the call was, like the next couple of weeks are really going to be the hardest weeks, and that should be the hump of the camel, and everything should start going back to normal, at least in the biggest, hardest hit cities in the U.S., which is currently some of the most populated cities in the U.S. So, the whole trend should start going back down at the end of the month.
Well, we will have to see about that. I think some of these countries that have roughly the same amount of confirmed cases as, say, like New York City does on par, they've begun to flatten the curve, but that still takes time, and we're waiting to see these not only the long term fallout of this, just on a public health level, but also waiting to see if there's a reemergence of sorts once restrictions are reduced.
Right, you lift the reductions and everybody gets infected for a second time, and there's
Yeah.
an aftershock.
Yeah. So it's going. I think there's an amount of wishful thinking we have to engage in, because otherwise, it's it seems pretty bleak. But
I
yeah,
refer back to humor instead of wishful thinking, like actual positive thinking, like a real human being. I just make fun of the situation we're in.
yeah,
That makes people laugh and,
Just
and
laugh at
brings
the
up.
pain.
right, yeah.
You get a little positive morale boost, and that's the only thing I can offer to the whole situation. Like, for example, like the unintended consequences of this whole situation. Like, everything about this fucking sucks. Of course it does. However, my job site has never smelled better. Ever. Like, why don't we do this all the time? Why doesn't everybody shower every day?
Why doesn't everybody wash their hands every day?
Yeah.
I know. Why don't we have wash stations for guys before lunch? Like, now we got 5-gallon buckets of water with a little foot pump and Dawn dish soap.
Right.
Why didn't we do this before? Like,
Well, that's kind of what I was talking about earlier. Is there are unique risks to working in, say, healthcare or food service with this crisis, but there are relatively unique ones to working in the trades where you don't have access to, say, like a fully functional bathroom or cleaning supplies necessarily, or the ability to eat somewhere that has been disinfected, or even like be 6 feet away from someone effectively.
I was gonna say like personal space.
Yeah,
Yeah.
to have that proximity. So that's what's concerning to me. Is I don't. It's good on you guys. Like good on you guys for taking it seriously. I don't know how like ubiquitous. I don't know how like consistent that is throughout
Well,
all job sites.
it-
If I had to guess, I would say you're pretty much the only ones doing it.
I was gonna say, I remember that video we
we're in the
watched.
top 5%.
That video we watched the other night of like a construction crew. There's probably like 30 to 50 people there, and this guy was yelling out to the rest of his coworkers that he was leaving, that their supervisor didn't care about them. Like, why didn't they have a place to wash their hands?
Right. I mean, well, that ties into multiple things, and we can certainly get into like the why of it all. I mean, it's functionally difficult for sure,
Yeah.
but it's also like it's not meant like like manufacturing and construction are the kind of classical expendable workers. That's why there's this culturally perpetuated tough guy bullshit within it, because we're meant to feel expendable as well.
Right, and the survivors kind of overcompensate. And they're like, look, I've been doing this for 20 years and I haven't died yet, when everybody else has either died or fractured something or lost an eyeball.
Yeah, and it's beyond also like the labor pool for construction especially is in decline, and has been for a while.
I would say it's closer to dried up.
Yeah, well, yeah, no, exactly. That's my point. Is I can't remember what the actual figure was, but the average age of someone working in construction, I believe, is in their 50s. The average age.
That'd be 45 or 50, man. I work with a bunch of old dudes.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, it's a bunch of old people who are very unhealthy, and not saying the young people are healthy too, but it doesn't perpetuate this culture of like even like full personhood. What it perpetuates is this culture of like sacrifice, of saying like, okay, you broke your arm, get back on the job, coward. Like Matt broke his arm last week and he's here, he didn't complain at all. It's
I'm suffering from lateral epichondritis right now.
I don't even know what that is.
I have to put my arm in a sling and hang a bucket off of it and work out of that with my left hand.
Ah,
That's how you make your living. You just tie that shit up,
yeah.
you use it for something, hang something off of it, and keep working.
That's what I'm saying. And I mean, I'm not indicting the whole industry here. Like, there are bosses who take care of their workers certainly more than like the industry standard, let's say, or at least care when something bad happens. Even if there's not like preventative measures. And that's kind of part of my point is like the profit motive and the nature of the industry, in a lot of industries, but particularly in this one, because of the risks involved, just the latent risks every day, like that you might drop a house on top of yourself, or get run over by heavy machinery or
Fall
whatever.
off a ladder.
Yeah, etc.
Ladders, Jesus.
Yeah, I mean they're dangerous.
Relax.
But these things aren't conducive, to safety. So when we're talking about like a virus that's killing people, who like touched the wrong thing in the grocery store, and then you extrapolate it to things that are already unsafe, like garbage men, I believe, have the most dangerous, if not, one of the most, if not the most dangerous job in the United States in terms of like deaths and injuries. And
So,
construction is high up there.
this is kind of lighthearted, if you don't mind. The town of Jackson is refusing all recyclables now because they don't want to have to sort your trash, and they don't want to touch the stuff that you've been touching, and that there's just too much risk involved for the workers. So they're just refusing recyclables.
Yeah.
And the lady I work for says, well, that's not acceptable. She let them pile up for the last 3 weeks. And she said, I'm running out of room. Can I put them in the garage that I'm supposed to be building for her? And I'm like, we're hanging sheetrock, we're painting, we're putting up lighting. We can't put that in there. So I had to take her recyclables to my local town, in the back of my truck. So she put them in the back of my truck. I Lysoled the bins off, and then I put them in the recyclables. Then I Lysoled the bins again and returned them to her. It was a truck and a half worth of recyclables.
I saw that they're doing that in other towns too.
And heaven forbid they start doing it in my town, because we'll pile it up. I got 35 acres here. I know I can pile it up for a while, but it's just too much. They say, well, just throw it in the hopper. We'll throw it in with regular trash. And I'm like, that just seems too irresponsible. And that's why.
In a lot of circumstances, that's what they do anyway. Like recycling programs, I don't know if it's like broad in general, but for the most part, recycling programs, like the stuff just ends up in a landfill anyway. They're not recycling.
I know locally, at least, my little brother worked for the town of Madison for a while, and started to get into the transfer facility, and they separate everything: plastic, different types of plastic, different types of glass. They go crazy, and you have to separate all this stuff, and then they pile it all up in the same friggin' pile, and then send it down the conveyor belt for people to examine what is or isn't recyclable, and then send it off to be recycled when it can be. The rest of it goes to a landfill, and the glass goes to be crushed up into roadside paint. That's why the yellow and white lines are shiny, is because it has ground up glass in it.
Interesting. I did not know that. Do we have a
new
graphic
every
for
day.
that? The more you know.
So, like 80% of the glass you think you were recycling goes to that. Whether it's whether you get your 10 cents for it or 5 cents or whatever, most of it still just goes to that. It doesn't actually get melted down and turned into new Sam Adams bottles. It's crushed up and put on the road.
No joke. Huh.
Yeah, not even kidding. Only about, I heard 15% of the plastic that you recycle actually gets recycled.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
more
That sounds
plastic
about
bottles.
right.
Yeah, and they can't really do much with it anyway. Like the bottlers don't want to refill the bottles, and they can't melt it down and make new bottles because of how like the chemical makeup of the plastic. Um,
So I'm told by this one YouTube video I
how do
watched
we
that
get
like
here?
almost half of why that is because people don't take the caps off their bottles, the labels off the bottles, and the little ring underneath the cap.
Yeah.
If you take all of that off your bottle, it's more likely to be recycled and actually melted down and turned back into another plastic bottle of some kind.
I don't know if I buy that. That seems really like a user focused excuse to like not have to
like
do.
If you scrub this
Yeah.
and then get the goo gone
Yeah.
out to get all the glue off.
I know.
Yeah. Yeah, no, like I don't know about that. I'm pretty
Like,
sure
they
if
could
you
take another step, like the human being that has to pull that bottle off the conveyor belt could take that little ring off and throw it into the good pile instead of the bad pile. I know.
hell, you pay me
Yeah.
$30 an hour, I'll do that.
Right?
Let's do it.
You're paying me $30 an hour. I will scoop shit out of a stall for a day.
For a day.
Just one day.
I can do it for a day.
So
But
I'm gonna before we keep talking about recycling, although I'm actually kind of interested in this, we'll have to keep bringing you back because you're full of fun facts. I'm gonna bring
I'll
up.
hook you up with factoids next time.
You won't be able to see it. Hang on, maybe I can. I'll send it to you. Actually,
You have that capability.
I do. I have all sorts of capabilities. You don't know what I'm capable of.
Dude, I feel like I'm living in Star Trek. I walk up to a door, it opens itself. People are sending me videos and they play themselves.
And you're sending me inappropriate videos as well.
Yeah, so I'm sorry. My wife is really into those. I don't know if yours is, but
Yeah, I mean,
boobs.
Make
Yes,
sure
I'm
everybody
into
has an
boobs.
opportunity to watch it if they want to.
who doesn't like a pair of boobs? We here on the Culture, Language, and Art of the Worker podcast, we are pro boob.
We are very boob friendly.
Not only just the pro boob, which is important, not to knock that down, but she was being responsible too. You see how she covered her sneeze with her shirt.
Exactly. Yes. Health conscious. Parker, I will send that to you. Okay, so
Just put it up on the screen. I mean, everybody should see that.
yeah, I'm pretty sure YouTube will, at the very least,
Yeah.
demonetize us, if not flag us for that. But I will think about it. We'll put that on our Pornhub stream. That's the Claw After Dark.
My mom always told me it's the thought that counts, and results don't matter.
Right.
So think about it.
If you're not watching the stream anyway, I'd just be like, yeah, I put it out there. Everybody loves it.
Yeah.
All right, so I just sent you that article. I'm gonna bring up this. This is Contractor Magazine, and this pretty much. I mean, there's a lot of like speculation, kind of like you were saying, but what seems to track is with very few exceptions, most trade publications are in agreement that business is beginning to contract. And it's not quite at the levels yet of, say, like 2008, 2009. But it is, this age of like infinite growth, this very short age of, hyper financialized, hyperinflated growth is over. And the kind of factors within that that aren't really addressed are also, like we said, the labor pool drying up. And if demand begins to fall as well, one thing I was trying to touch on that I'm concerned about is the debt of certainly large companies, but even your local handyman, let's say, or your relatively small construction company.
The
That
term is truck in a truck.
Yeah, well, exactly. But these people who maybe they have 5, 10 guys even, and they're pretty much borrowing everything, and then they're able to make a living out of that. But essentially, like their company and their workers are owned by private equity, who takes interest against what they borrow in order to do their produce in order to produce what they do.
Right.
So
That production is what pays for what was financing what they were able to produce. That pays for what they were able to produce. That pays for financing what they were able to produce.
right, because there's a thing, in organic composition of capital, we know there's dead labor, what's called dead labor, or constant capital, which is like the plants, the factories, the tools, the materials, all the the
Stuff you need to make the stuff.
Yeah, but more than that, in a way. So it's constant capital. It's your dead labor, and then you have living labor or variable capital, which is the actual producers. It's the bodies making the things. And since we know the rate of profits has been declining for a while now, and as these kind of classical, important, I would even say, businesses begin to contract, we're going to see the intersections of a labor crisis, of a health crisis, certain maybe the housing crisis as well, but also the corporate debt crisis, and this kind of fall of our sugar rush economic system, which since the 80s has financialized every aspect. And that's kind of what I'm getting at, is even if you have 3 dudes in a truck doing roofs or whatever, tile, you probably are owned by private equity. You probably aren't free and clear. And as these things begin to contract, and as we see these interconnected systems, certainly on the materials end, because we know that part of the organic composition of capital, the dead labor, the constant capital, that is rising. So when we see things like, essentially what they always do is they liquidate labor. You have to, they're shooting themselves in the foot to some extent, because the way you make profits is through surplus value, through extracting value from the people who produce the things, the commodities that you then sell. So if you fire half of your workers, you can only exploit, or you can only extract surplus value from half the workers now, which means in order to keep up that rate of profits, you have to extract twice as much from those workers. And that's not impossible to do. That's very hard to do, especially with constant capital rising. So these are the kind of, this is why we're saying this crisis is the kind of terminus between our failures of a healthcare system, housing, like labor, but not in terms of people not wanting to work, in terms of not providing people productive work, and a living wage, and
safe working place.
Yeah, and the distribution and production systems themselves. So this is all roads meeting in a car crash right now, and that's what's concerning, and that's why I mean you kind of said it, and maybe that's the best way rather than showing a bunch of charts which are kind of like, um, you know, they're just
It's
guesses.
information overload and really give people the real information.
Well, we're looking at trends anyway, and if it's trending down, that meets every other, trend that we see. So that's really the important information, rather than like how much what contraction we're gonna see in quarter 4. Um, and that doesn't matter to most working class people, if any working class people. But the important thing to us is going to be what they're going to attempt to do is either push a lot of people out into, which I mean we're seeing now um, because of this health crisis. We're seeing people be pushed onto unemployment. We're seeing systems like that. I think it was over 10 million now. And what we're also going to see is people being pushed into greater precarity. That's this term precariat, precarity mixed with proletariat. It fits perfectly because these things can't be separated. You can't have a class that produces everything and yet is alienated from it, and has to then, in order to reproduce themselves socially and economically, has to supplicate themselves to another higher class. You're always going to have problems with that. That's a bad system of production and distribution. And we see as these systems hyper financialize, as everybody is owned by somebody who is pretty much one of 100 companies. We see the shock wave being pushed out. So it's important to recognize that these things are real. That I think this idea that it's just the next couple of weeks are going to be really rough, and then after that it's going to basically go back to normal.
We can enjoy our summer.
I think is beyond being just deluded to some extent, and I don't mean that to be offensive. I just to be blunt, like that is a laughable daydream. Because we haven't even begun to reconcile with the economic factors behind this. This is the kind of we just started. Well, I mean, this is a bad metaphor, but we just started falling, or we've been falling since the late '70s, and we almost hit the ground, and then they just pulled like the floor out, so we're just gonna keep falling forever and ever and ever. So the important thing is to begin to understand and build these alternate systems. But we don't have to focus on that right now. I do have one question of something I saw in the paper, and I think you had brought it up a while ago. I saw nurses having to resort to using like underlayment, which is something you put, for people who don't know, it's something you put like, it's synthetic underlayment, and you put it on a roof to keep moisture out. It was like Lowe's and Home Depot or something had donated a bunch of underlayment and Typar and stuff to make PPE. Is this something you guys were involved in as well?
So I can tell you, Triflex and
yes. I don't use brand names. That's kind of.
Excuse me. There are several brand names of underlayments for roofs that are.
I'm just kidding. You can say Triflex.
Perfect vapor barriers, which means they don't let any moisture through at all. Which means their structure doesn't allow really any cell of moisture or virus or bacteria through it. It's a perfect moisture, no nothing through it. Like it's a perfect barrier.
Industry tip though, these things absolutely do let moisture through. So be
They do.
aware.
If you let them, if they stay wet long enough, of course they do. If you let anything stay wet long enough, moisture will get through. Even bitumen-based
Mm.
underlayments.
Well, that's true. But the underlayment they were using in particular, not to get all like technical, but the underlayment in particular, I saw them using in the paper, in the pictures rather, was a particular brand. I don't remember what it's called because it's probably called like Roof Right or something stupid and innocuous. But Grip Right, actually, I believe it is, and it has like the illustration of 3-tab shingles on them.
So
And we've
both
had
know
problems with that
that
material
company
before
makes
leaking.
many different underlayments. The one you're referring to is okay. It's not great for what it's meant to be, but it's okay. It's grippy, so you can walk on it.
Grip okay.
Yeah, go
It's
ahead.
okay.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I mean, we've had problems with that underlayment before, and again, not to get too technical, but I also there's something to be said as well. I think a lot of people, um, maybe just looking for a good story, or maybe like kind of misunderstanding what's happening here, are like happy about that, or like, yeah,
That's
cool.
a feel-good story.
Well, in some ways, it's like okay, somebody is stepping up, but in a real way, we have a system which allows, say, Lowe's, to then decide out of its own benevolence, that it wants to help, a month into, the most devastating modern crisis, we've faced, by like donating like terrible
Construction
or like
equipment.
barely adequate, maybe like equipment that has to be repurposed,
Well, and also like
rather than having that equipment readily available,
So what are they using this roofing product for?
to make
Are
the
they making
PPE, to make the
roofing equipment?
yeah, to make the like protective coverings for their clothes.
So yeah, protecting your clothes is cool. That's fine.
Yeah, no, it's good. I just this whole public-private partnership is so loaded with not only propaganda but this
Bunch
concept
of
of
bullshit.
yeah, like the fact that our
I'm gonna
healthcare
say bullshit.
yeah, it's
healthcare
bullshit.
workers like have to rely on the benevolence of Lowe's and Home Depot because they aren't provided with the proper equipment in the first place.
Right. Well, it's very ad hoc, and that's like good on them for like not Lowe's, but but the people who actually took those materials. I believe it was a bunch of hospital staff and volunteers that took the materials and actually like made them into whatever the kind of suits and stuff like that. So good on them for being able to like repurpose things and being thrifty, but at the same time, like, it's A, it's not the same, and B, like, what the fuck is that? Like, what kind of response is that to be like, well, just wrap your
Big corporate care
yeah,
after the fact.
right, and that's what I'm kind of getting at is what's laden within these stories is the fact that, is to be like, this is a good thing that happened. When if we had better systems of production and distribution, I mean, A, their solution was inadequate.
Yeah.
Like, we can all agree that. It was too late and too little for the most part, and it required an enormous amount of
work.
Yeah, and all these sorts of things. But also, like, it's only to legitimize that system or to make the appearance of legitimacy of that system. Is like, see, something happened, and a month into it, we sent them plastic,
duct tape.
Yeah, like that's it's
I have had
frustrating.
a roll of 6 mil poly in my basement for ever since I lived in your basement. And
Without the context.
no, it's right there. I'm looking at it. And it's like I can give that to people at the hospital, and they're just gonna laugh at me.
Yeah.
But basically, that's what they need. They just need a barrier between sick people and health people. And if you can identify healthy people from sick people, that'll help establish the barrier. That'll help slow the spread. That'll help save the lives. Trouble is that the tests aren't there.
Well,
I waited.
yeah.
You know this. I told
Do you want to talk about that experience a little bit?
Over a week to find out that I was negative, but I had a cough and nobody wanted to be within 100 yards of me.
Did you get the nasal swab?
What's that?
Did you get the nasal swab or whatever it was?
I got two in at the same time. She put two nasal swabs up one nostril at the same time.
Oh, yeah?
They go in about 4.5 or 5 inches deep.
I was gonna say, it looked like it went deep when I saw
Up
a
to your
video.
eyeballs, huh?
That'll make your eyes water.
I don't know if you know what 5 inches looks like.
I know what 3 inches looks like, I'll tell you that much.
It's a fuckload is what it is. She went right in. She wasn't like shy at all. She's like, all right, don't win. Don't move your head back. She grabbed the back of my head, rammed that shit in. Oh, man.
Grabbed your hair.
Very effective at her job. I commend her healthcare ability. If there was anything in there, she got it. I promise. Anyways, I had to sit home for a week and a half waiting for those results, and I was at home for half a week before that. The whole thing's all fucked up. If we had this 45-minute test that everybody thinks is gonna come magically out of fucking a unicorn ass, I don't know where it's coming from, but if it would show up, and if we get to these rural areas as much as it is needed in New York and California and Louisiana and all the hotspots in America, of course those guys probably need it more. They're losing hundreds and hundreds of people a day. So far, we're up to 10 deaths in Maine and 9 in New Hampshire. So, New England isn't as hard hit yet, but all the vacationers that just came up from New York and Massachusetts, they've just been here for a week and a half.
Right.
They're gonna start the community spread thing.
Yes. I have a graph I want to bring up here anyway. I'm just trying to size it.
Are you fact checking my numbers?
No. It kind of shows how like the reality that we're facing a little bit. I want to bring it up here real quick.
Looks like New Hampshire's at 13 deaths now.
Yeah, I mean, it's
4 today.
It's spreading.
Yeah.
So I'm going off of Sunday's numbers.
Yeah.
That's gonna change, of course, but
yeah, it's just exponentially going.
I actually went to work on Monday, so I stopped Googling all this shit.
Okay, so I have it up here right now. Basically, the idea is with lax, with stay at home, but people are treating it kind of lax. Our hospitals are going to be overloaded at the end of the month, basically, early May. This is for Carroll County. This is specifically for Carroll County. This says we have 41 beds available to us in this county. I don't know how true that is. The one hospital I know, well, I guess there are 2 hospitals in range, but that is incredibly low.
Yeah.
So we will cross that line.
So I drive by our memorial all the time, and they have these 2 signs going south or north, and it says, emergency tent this way. And I'm thinking, there's another couple of hundred beds there, and there's, so many hundreds of beds already in the hospital. How the fuck are you talking about 41 beds available?
Well, Memorial...
And Huggins, maybe?
I know Memorial only has 25, critical unit beds.
I don't think that's critical unit. I think that's total beds.
Total?
Yeah, I don't believe they have an ICU big enough to hold 25 people.
Yeah.
I think they have the ability to keep 25 people who are in
critical condition,
in severe condition
Mhm.
on ventilators.
Yeah.
So that's critical condition for this virus on this occasion. They have that many ventilators and beds available. If I really break my back falling off a roof tomorrow, it's like
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
What are my chances to survive?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, and who's gonna get triaged in that circumstance? If there is one bed left and you have a heart attack, or whatever, and I can't breathe, who gets killed?
Dude, I would kick you out.
I also-
You wouldn't have a choice, though.
You
Is
are
my
contagious.
point.
I'm sorry.
We're down. Hey, figure it out, guys.
Wait. Hang on. What were you saying, Parker? You broke
I
up.
said they're gonna throw a sword down and say, "Figure it out, guys."
It's they're
That's
gonna
not fair.
the King Solomon thing. They rip the baby in half. But I will
Don't
show
bring
you
up
this.
Stalin.
I will show you this graph later, Matt. But it basically says that even under very strict stay-at-home regulations, and I would say this model tends to err on the low end, from what I've seen of it the past few weeks. We will essentially just be riding the
The 41 bed.
the maximum available for quite a while, from essentially from essentially mid-May until mid-July,
So, if I may, not
which
to
is peak
pander-
season here too.
Yeah.
Which is peak season.
I think
I don't want to pander to the optimists or nothing, but if I may, there's some advantage to being out here in New England.
What's
and
that?
out in the country.
What's that? No.
The how close is your closest neighbor?
100 feet.
So, well, the 100 feet that way, maybe, but like a couple hundred feet the other way.
Yeah, but
Right,
okay, I get what you're saying. I do, and that's certainly like an issue in the cities and how they've piled people on top of each other. But I mean, consider this for a moment. While it might be devastating, I'm not saying it's like more risky to live in the country. I'm saying like it's still too much risk, because you still have to. If you live in a city, how far do you got to go to get to the grocery store?
10 minutes.
Not even. You can walk to it. If you live in, I would say and some people don't believe me sometimes when I say this, but our housing costs around here are comparable to a major city.
yeah.
Like, and the wages are low comparatively. So there's some external factors as well that up the risk, but also like for a county of 50,000 people, the influx of people. If July 1st, people get stir crazy and they're being as lax as like Sununu is right now, and we get this influx of people, I mean, any idea of like, well, your neighbor's not very close to you, that goes out the window. And also there are far less resources here than in some of these places, because resources move through those transport centers.
Well, and
So Manchester is going to get hit harder and sooner by this, for sure. But ours,
Every one of us knows that crackhead from Manchester that comes to visit every once in a while.
well, but ours could drag on longer, and literally, like, it could have equal effects. Like, in a city, if losing 2% of the population is a huge number, and would have devastating implications. And I know I'm being kind of like cold and mathematical about this, but like losing 2% of the population here is not that many people. And if it were a handful of people, given how like wealth and resources are consolidated in these communities, it would throw everything into upheaval, because of how we've chosen to operate ourselves within these small communities.
Well, and that's the thing, like being in a tourist town, like all the business owners who did decide to shut down for whatever reason they chose, like a lot of them were saying, thank God this is happening now and not in June, July, and August, which is when we pay for these slow months anyway. That's how we pay for it. Like they're
Right.
not gonna. I feel like they're gonna have a really hard time staying closed at that point.
Well,
So I don't know if you guys knew this, but there was a heavy metal band called Dead Season from Maine.
yeah, they have that Garth Brooks cover.
Yeah, they did. I
Yeah.
know, and
Mhm.
you know what? Anyways, for the time it was fun. It was way back when I was young. Anyways, they named their band after the month of April, which is the dead season for every tourist town in New England. So, I mean, like, everybody around here knows this is the dead season. If you're going to have a global crisis and you're going to lose revenue, this is the time to do it because you're basically shut down already. So, a lot of those small businesses, restaurants and hotels and motels and all that, I'm not going to say they're not unaffected, but they are less affected than most industries.
Maybe the owners. I see a lot of people working for those industries that are not handling this too well because they're already paid a very low and precarious income, and now it's gone.
For sure, dude. Every time I worked nothing but restaurants for the first, I don't know, 5 years of my working life.
Right.
And
I think we
every
all
April,
started out like
you
that,
shut
right?
down for 2 weeks and clean the hood vents, and you pull out all the
Yeah.
refrigerators and you clean behind them. And once a year, we actually wipe the walls down behind the refrigerators.
Yeah.
So in every restaurant in North Conway, I work for all of them. That's a little factoid for you. And only once a year, they actually wipe down the walls behind the refrigerators and clean the hood vents.
Right.
So, this is really the best time of year, like you said, for all those industries to be hit.
Right, but again, like I get what you're saying, but that works within this framework of like everything stops when Connecticut, Massachusetts, and Rhode Island and Quebec people stop, and it almost like makes us kind of like it takes us out of the equation as if we live within this kind of binary between people who own local businesses, which a lot of even the local businesses are owned by people who are out of state.
Yeah.
And the tourists who come from out of state to gobble up resources and keep workers in precarity. And my point is that these workers who are already heavily in precarity because of the nature of this system that we're forced to live under, certainly within this rural community, those people, this is not the best time for that. There's no good time for them to stop having an income, and the fact that we've added all these other layers on top of it, and we are a certain community that has a large population of people who come in and own mansions on the lake and buy up extra resources. That's my point. Maybe Boston will get toilet paper back before we do.
Certainly they will.
And if See, here's another point too, and again, using math about a crisis like this seems kind of cold in some circumstances. But what I would like to say is, if we have 25 beds, all that takes is 25 sick people to come from out of state, and we're overloaded.
Yeah.
That is
And
a
then we can't even
crazy
take care
low
of the
amount.
sick people that already live here.
Right. Like, I'm not saying like we have it worse in New York and blah blah blah. I think we know that's not true, especially under these circumstances. My greatest worry is about how easily this system will become overloaded, because nobody cares about Carroll County, New Hampshire. The federal government, there's no, we don't have like a mayor to speak for us that's
Yeah.
like on CNN every night. Rural communities are easy to forget on the national stage, especially. Hell, even at the state level.
Mhm.
And we, if all 50,000 of us died, the main kind of day of mourning would take place over the fact that people wouldn't be able to come here and get Dunkin'
Enjoy
Donuts
their
as
summer
easily,
vacation
or whatever. Yeah, people wouldn't be there when the tourists want to go get a burger, and it reveals. It reveals these roles we're supposed to adopt for ourselves and how little we're thought about. And I think that's worth sitting with. It's not a statement of is it more risky, or are we better off or worse in New York, or blah, blah, blah. I think we have our own distinct issue, and that needs to be taken very seriously. And what I'm concerned is these people who are doing comparatives of saying, it's not like we're Boston, it's not like we're New York City. And I hear our governor kind of doing that all the time. We're different. New Hampshire's just different. It's not going to hit us like there. We're just magically somehow different. The problem with that is A, we're not. And B, we have our own distinct issues that we need to deal with, and not be it's not a problem because New York City has it worse, or whatever. We're all kind of on our own here in a way as individual communities, because resources will dry up very quickly, and within this private distribution system, there's no one who's going to come in and fill that void. And in New Hampshire, especially with how little community supports and kind of alternate support, production, distribution systems there are. If 2 grocery stores shut down, what are you gonna do? If one shuts down, you go one choice, and most people will be
already 6 or 7 or 8 towns driving to that one grocery store anyway, or
right,
there's 2 grocery stores.
Yes, and
we noticed that on the other side of the border here. I went last Sunday, and I saw nothing but New Hampshire, Vermont, Maine, and Massachusetts plates. More than Maine plates. They were all over the place, and that was the only place I know of that sold toilet paper in bulk.
You talking Sam's Club or whatever?
Porter, just over the border.
Okay.
About 20 minutes from Freedom, New Hampshire, which, if you ask me, should be the capital of the U.S.
False.
Because it's called fucking Freedom. And everybody and the brother, and the mother, and the sister, and the cousin's uncle's brother, all came over because it has been untouched. It was a diamond in the rough a couple weeks ago.
That's what I mean, though, is these smaller communities where it's harder to get resources, or their supply chains are further downstream. What's going to happen is continually the next town is going to be raided, and then there's nothing there to replenish that consistently.
And then you go to the next town.
You should have seen how many chicken legs I bought last week. Oh my god.
Matt's hoarding all the chicken.
Did some panic buying.
Matt's hoarding all the chicken.
Like a 12-pack. It's a family pack.
We're going to put his address up on the screen later.
You can go steal some chicken legs.
Don't do that. I only have so much ammunition. That's really hard to come by.
Also, he has limited ammunition. Don't come to our house. We have unlimited ammunition.
1,000 rounds.
Yeah, but what if 1,001 people come?
Then I beat them with the buttstock of a Mosin.
Plus, you know your AR-15 is gonna jam, bro.
No, I leave that downstairs. I go all bolt action and Woodstock just in case if I have to go, Sammy Sosa on somebody.
My shotgun's never jammed. I'm just saying.
Barry Bonds over here.
All right.
Dude, you've seen that thing, man. It's a monster. Oh. Anyways, I'm sorry. This isn't a gun channel. I shouldn't talk about that.
What?
Someday.
Who says this isn't a gun show?
This is my sign off. At some point, if we want to talk guns,
Okay.
or if we want to talk construction with brand names, I'm all for it.
Yeah.
My wife is giving me these eyes like I have to get off the phone now.
Okay. Well, you know what? I would like to have the debate sometime between AR-15s and guns that are good, actually. So, if you would like to have that debate sometime, I would be happy to do it.
Dude, you talking AR-15s? You talking M16s? You talking AR-10s?
Yeah, and then there are guns that don't jam.
There's a lot of variants, and there's a million brands that build them all way different. And they're mil-spec, and there's aftermarket, and there's... dude, you don't... all right.
That's a lot of qualifications.
I really have to go, or she's going to claw my face off.
All right, Matt, we love you. Good luck to you, man. Stay safe.
Good
Y'all
night.
enjoy it. Thank you very much.
Bye. Well, that went all sorts of different places.
Talk about recycling.
I hope everyone learned something about recycling and guns and the economy. I have a couple more things I'd like to get onto, if nobody minds.
Yeah.
Actually, well, before we do that, because I'm gonna pull something up here. Do either of you have any thoughts about what we were talking about?
It's a small thing, and I don't know everything about it, so I'm not directly involved with it. But I found I was informative because lives in Maine, works in New Hampshire, and because New Hampshire's got that specific qualification about quantification, I should say, about construction.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. Whereas my wife works in
Manufacturing.
lives in New Hampshire, works in Maine, and she's working manufacturing, which is still an essential thing, even though they just make stoves.
Is she working stuff?
Yeah. They're going to be shutting down May 1st. Most of this has to do with the supply
Right.
aspect. But then I believe they said they're going to be off for 6 weeks, and then they're going to be back to work.
Okay. Just maybe you don't know, and I know this is kind of like secondhand info, but what qualifies that statement of theirs? Like, are they shutting down until the supply chain kind of levels out again, or has less kind of impediments, or is it more just like we're trying to shut down till this blows over in like public health terms, like. You know what I mean? Like, is this a business decision, or is this?
Well, yeah, I can't speak for sure, but from the sounds of it, it's more of the former, just as far as supply chain kind of leveling out.
Yeah, I was gonna say I would be surprised if it was like more of a public health thing since they've chosen May 1st, which is still like 3 weeks out.
Yeah, there
Yeah,
have
they're not
been
shutting
quite
down
a
till
few
May.
Yeah.
people Yeah, there have been quite a few people who've not been there. I guess there's this open door policy, whereas like if you feel like you have to self quarantine, go ahead. You're going to be out for at least 14 days, though.
Yeah.
Even if you want to book for a week, it's like no, it's you're out for 2 weeks.
Yeah. I think they have to some extent. Like, I think
Yeah.
there's something there. I forget exactly what it is, but if someone's showing symptoms, I think they have to tell you, like, you're not allowed to come back until
14 days.
a certain amount of
Yeah.
time anyway. Yeah, so I
Yeah.
don't think that's particular to them, but go ahead.
Yeah, so they're a little shorthanded over there right now because of people self quarantining and
Yeah.
some people who just need to be quarantined, I guess. And so I think it's also kind of partially a labor uh, issue as well.
Yeah, and I imagine like with schools closing, that hurts the labor force there as well as it did everywhere.
Right. It's one of those good times to, I guess, in a sense, it's kind of one of those good times to not be a couple that works at the same place and you're
Yeah. I actually have one more question for you guys before I get on to my little spiel here. What is something that you think is like the most concerning thing, other than like the direct effects, like are you worried about like the grocery store not being open? Are you worried about the pharmacy, or maybe even stuff more complicated than that, like I don't know. Think about that question for a second.
yeah.
You get what I'm saying? Other than like the direct, like not being able to go to work and not being able to, I don't know, lick things in Walmart.
Yeah, things you used to do.
Yeah, all the stuff we normally do.
I don't know if it's necessarily what I'm the most worried about, but I am worried about the pharmacies a little bit, like being a woman who needs birth control, like, because they won't sell it over the counter, so you have to have a prescription. You can't, no doctor is going to see you to like refill a prescription right now, so you have to figure that out. And then if they close the pharmacies, how are you supposed to fill your prescriptions?
Yeah.
Or you have a medication you're on or
Yeah.
whatever, and you fucking need it. Yeah, I'm worried about my sister. She's got asthma and stuff like that. So not only am I worried about the disease aspect of it, but also God forbid they close down pharmacies and she needs a refill.
Yeah.
I don't know. I got quite a few I got quite a few worries, but I mean, I can speak to this as far as when I read about they're taking more they're trying to take more drastic measures as far as like these bigger grocery stores, as far as limiting the amount of people going in, stuff like that.
Yeah,
it
was 105 at the grocery store I was at today.
Yeah. So I'm like, that made me like super nervous because it's like I don't want to be, because usually I'm the guy there that's there when it's open right now.
Right. Yeah.
The senior citizens have gone through, of course. But I just want to get in and get out.
Yeah, you don't want to be. Now you see all these pictures.
I mean, that was my usual routine anyway. Except I felt more comfortable. I could go in the afternoon if I needed to or whatever. I don't feel that way now.
Yeah.
Because I just want to get in and get out. No hassle. So I read about this and it made me a bit more nervous, and then especially because this is since they instituted this, and I went there, and it kind of looks like Mad Max a little bit at Walmart with the
People spray paint
everywhere.
in the mouth.
Well, and the other thing
There was
that's
a guy there at the door that was like that.
the other thing that's kind of concerning about that is like, they have this, it's like one person per family to go in, no children. So like all these single mothers I've seen a lot of threads on Facebook, like, like post in this group if you need someone to come sit with your kid outside in your car while you go grocery shopping. And like that's a nice thought, but I feel like that could also end very badly if you just have like some random stranger watching over your child.
It's somebody from Facebook. Relax.
I'm just saying, like they are making that rule, like you can't bring your kids in, so it's going to put single mothers in a very precarious situation.
Somebody met on Facebook has ever done anything bad, especially to a child.
Totally,
it's fine. That seems like a great idea.
Never.
The lowest common denominator here in everything, and you guys kind of touched on it indirectly, and it's my message over and over and over and over and over again. The lowest common denominator here, the most important thing to change anything, to even have the potential to change anything for the better, is strong communities. I mean, you look at a lot of the precarity we face is due to the deliberate weakening of social bonds, especially within the community. Now, whether there's a multitude of factors that play into that, but if you have strong communities, there's mutual aid built in. Okay, you have organic support systems. It's more likely to function properly. When I was at the grocery store today, they have all the aisles taped out, right? So it's all one way. You only go this way through this one, this way through that one, blah, blah, blah. Okay, fine. If one person says, to hell with that, or doesn't notice it because it's like tape on the floor, and unless you were looking, you wouldn't notice it. It throws it, like it's crazy how little chaos it takes to throw everything. Like literally, that place was insane because of that. You couldn't get through, and anyway, but like you were talking with having to talk to people on Facebook and be like, yeah, maybe this person will watch my kid while I run into Walmart.
Stand outside my car while I
But
go
also-
groceries.
But also, we could, with strong communities, we could begin to build these systems of production, but certainly of distribution at the very least, of being like, we're gonna bring stuff to your house. Oh, you have a kid and you're a single parent and you can't go in?
Give me your grocery list.
Yeah, I'll get it for you. You can pay me when I get there. Or don't worry about it. You get it for me next time. I mean, there are economic factors that play into that, sure.
Sure.
But like everything, the first step is always, and the the underlying issue here is always the strength of the community. That's why I was talking about this with a reporter the other day. And something I want to underscore in every conversation from now on is there's a lot of people that tend to live under this illusion that like you can change the world in like one big push. Like all you have to do is like whatever, like overthrow the government or even like vote someone in. Go ahead, what?
I said throw money at it.
Yeah, throw money at it. You get it's this concept of like I just push a button and then everything's better now.
Yeah,
and
cool.
That comes from taking like a passive role in change. That's saying like I just have to do this one thing.
Mm-hmm.
I just have to donate to Amnesty International, and then the world's a better place.
Yeah.
Right?
And I don't have to think about it ever again.
Exactly. Somebody else will change it for me. And that's that. There's a lot of reasons behind that. But this is why electoralism works so well for people. It doesn't work well for them. But why most things are funneled through that. Of saying, if you want to change something, vote. And you should vote. Although, don't go vote right now.
Yeah.
Because that's in suicide, and we have the technology to be able to do it from our homes. So I don't get why
Seriously.
we're doing it in the first place. But whatever. That's a whole nother issue.
Yeah.
But this concept of just being able to push a button or put the right guy in charge, or that's gendered, right girl in charge, the right person in charge, and they have it figured out, and everything will be fine. You take a passive role in the change. When what really all you have to do, really, if you want to see broad sweeping change, just take care of the people you know as best you can. Seriously, I know that sounds like whatever, hippie-ish, whatever you want to call it, or like underwhelming maybe even, because it's not like taking arms against like the government or something, or
Not burning buildings down.
or even like yeah, or even like actively working towards set like specific goals of building alternative institutions. But the problem is here that the existing institutions have a amazing capacity to reproduce themselves. We will end up building new capitalism or new authoritarianism or new imperialism by trying to move toward. And I'm not saying like that's why we shouldn't do communism and stuff like that. What my point is, in order to achieve these things, ideology aside, all you have to do is, at its most basic, everyone can do it, right? You take care of those people in your circle that you have the capacity to help. So if Parker asks me for a loaf of bread, I give him a loaf of bread. If he is crying at 2 a.m. because of A, B, and C, or hell, if I am, I cry at 2 a.m. I'm a man, I cry. Parker picks up the phone, and you're over here. Parker picks up the phone, and he talks to me, and I feel better. If I need to run into Walmart and my kid can't come with me, I trust him to watch the little bastard. And if we can't do it in a relatively safe way where it's like, well, you shouldn't be within 6 feet of him or whatever, that's what we work out between each other. But that trust is there, that mutual support is there, that it's not like you have to create a new system in order to achieve these things.
You already have supports around you.
Right, and it's reciprocal.
Yeah.
And it's not like evenly reciprocal, because some people are just going to need more supports than other people. And I hate that obsessing over, like, it becomes transactional.
Yeah,
it's like if I do something for you, you do something for me. Like, just help the people in your immediate vicinity. The people you say you care about, right? Your friends, your family. If they ask for help, help them. If they don't ask for help, ask them if you can help. And if you need help, ask them for help. That's the reciprocity I'm talking about. Genuinely. And if you can't help, I mean, you can't. But this is literally what's going to change things, is building those things. Because it requires no ideology, really. And it does create alternative systems. It creates support systems where we don't let people fall through. If someone's going to take Parker's house, I show up and say, the hell you are. And maybe they still do, but hell, okay, you can sleep on my couch. Whatever. You know, that's not a perfect world. We're not trying to achieve something utopian. We can't. But in a realistic way, we change that outcome.
I go sleep that night.
Yeah, I mean, most of life is mitigating hard circumstances, unfortunately. Yeah. That's where we live. So if we can't even do the basic things of mitigating that, of not refusing to let people fall through the cracks, refusing to let people be atomized and be on their own in the wild, then this experiment's over. That's the thing I can't do about this, like, libertarianism and this, like, selfishness and this cult of Ayn Rand and all the whatever. Like, you don't exist in a vacuum on an island, you fool. Anyway. But seriously, just help your parents, your friends, your family, and things will get better. It's going to be tough and it's going to be scary, but that's literally the only thing you can do.
Yeah.
Anyway, I want to get to this real quick. And let me know your thoughts on it, for sure. But this is from the Michael Roberts blog, and he's a Marxist economist. Very good. Definitely recommend this one. Definitely great insight here. So I'm going to kind of just run through it a little bit here, and maybe we can expound on this in our second episode about this because we ran kind of long. But it essentially says there are 2 billion people living under some form of lockdown as a result of this pandemic. That's like a quarter of the world's population. Nearly all economic forecasts for global GDP in 2020 say there will be a contraction of 3 to 5%, as bad, if not worse, than the Great Recession of 2008 and 2009. According to the OECD, output in most economies will fall by an average of 25% while the lockdowns last, and lockdowns will directly affect sectors amounting up to 1/3 of GDP in major economies. For each month, that's huge. For each month of containment, there will be a loss of 2 percentage points in GDP growth. He says the lockdown in several major economies are having a drastic effect on production, investment, and above all, employment. The latest job figures for March out of the U.S. were staggering, with a monthly loss of 700,000 and a jump in unemployment to 4.5%. And you can see the payroll gains. This is a monthly change in U.S. non-farm payrolls in the thousands, I believe. So you can see 2008 and 2009, that huge dip. And then this is us right here.
We just went straight down.
Yeah, almost to the bottom of,
immediately,
like 2009, basically, before the quote-unquote recovery. And this is something we can talk about. I'd like to expand upon it enough when I have enough time, but this is the same, like, this is not a second recession. This is the same economic crisis. We didn't do anything about it in 2008.
Yeah.
In fact, beyond not doing anything about it, we assured that this would be far, far worse. We pushed it out into the future, and did everything we could pretty much to make sure it would be staggering.
Yeah, because that's the thing. This was coming before COVID-19 appeared.
Right.
It's just kind of timed perfectly.
Right.
For a perfect disaster.
This argument that it's an exogenous shock, I mean, maybe I'm arguing semantics here, but if we look at the effects of it, the what most people are going to feel, other than like the health impacts on an individual level, what we see is this is tied largely to this capitalist mode of production. Certainly this like global capitalist mode of production in a lot of ways. And I'm going to kind of get into that a little bit. But this is not a different recession, and this is not some like outside factor. This is just like, this is the problem with this mode of production and distribution directly. That when things like this happen, this system makes it far greater, expands it on a global level as much as possible because of supply chains and the production. He says these figures, okay, in 2 weeks, 10 million Americans have filed for unemployment benefits. All these figures surpass anything seen in the Great Recession of 2008 and 9, and even in the Great Depression of the 30s. Once the lockdowns are over, economies can quickly get back to business as usual. That's the claim of Treasury Secretary Mnuchin. Keynesian guru Larry Summers echoed this, saying, I have the optimistic guess, but it's only optimistic guess, that the recovery can be faster than many people expect because it's the character of the recovery from the total depression that hits a Cape Cod economy every winter, or the recovery in American GDP that takes place every Monday morning. During the lockdown, that's so fucking flippant.
Yeah.
During the lockdown, various governments have announced cash handouts and boosted unemployment benefits. That should save people's livelihoods during the lockdowns. Okay, one problem with this view is such have been the cuts in public services over the last decade or so, there's not enough staff to process claims and shift the cash. In the US, it's reckoned that many will not get any checks until June, by which time the lockdown might be over. Moreover, it's clear that many people and small businesses are not qualifying for the handouts for various reasons and will fall through the safety net. The reason is unemployment is not a social support program, largely. It presents as one. It is an austerity program meant to push you back into the private market, or cut the floor out from underneath you and push you into such great precarity that you will accept a cut in wages. It keeps people on a downward trajectory.
Mm-hmm.
That is its purpose. That was not the purpose it was meant to fill, where it came after the Great Depression, when I believe 20% of the labor force was unemployed. That's our watermark for things getting bad.
Mm-hmm.
This is anecdotal and I kind of just heard it from somewhere, but if I remember, the projection is something that 30% of the American workforce by the end of this will be unemployed. So, don't quote me on that, but I anecdotally remember hearing that, and it's something we should think about, honestly. Okay. Here's the important part. And this is why this isn't some outside shock to this otherwise well-functioning system.
Mm.
Okay. For example, 58% of American workers say they won't be able to pay rent, buy groceries, or take care of bills if quarantined for 30 days or less, according to a new survey. 1 in 5 workers say they'd be unable to meet these basic financial needs in less than 1 week under quarantine. Half of small businesses in the U.S. can't afford to pay employees for a full month under quarantine conditions. Half of small businesses in the U.S. can't afford to pay employees for a full month under quarantine conditions. That's what I'm talking about, the debt and kind of the precarity of small businesses as well. They don't have cash on hand to be able to do things like this. Okay, so this is another problem too. Asking the private marketplace to solve the problem it created is insanity. More than half of small businesses expect to see a loss in revenue somewhere between 10 to 30%. Indeed. More than half, I'm just going to underscore that. More than half of small businesses will see a loss in revenue somewhere between 10 and 30%. That is a huge hit.
Yeah.
That is a huge hit. Especially for things in the restaurant industries, retail, all this.
There's been a lot of talk about, there's probably a lot of restaurants that have closed their doors.
A lot of people aren't coming back.
Won't reopen.
A lot of people aren't coming back.
Those jobs are just gone now.
And hey, here's something you could do. Just give that business back to the employees and create it as a co-op.
Yeah.
There are all sorts of things we could do.
The people who created the products that you were selling are still available. All sorts of things
we could do. The federal government could step in. The states could step in. I mean, we don't have to get down too much in the weeds here, but it's crazy. Anyway. Many people are being forced to work, putting their health at risk because they can't work at home like better paid office-based workers. And here's something that's important, okay? Hang on, I'm going to zoom it in a little bit. This says working status and emotional well-being by socioeconomic group. Here we see in the lower socioeconomic group, 26% of people are working normally, 3% working from home, 15% their company closed or they were furloughed. In the lower middle, we see 29% working normally, 11% working from home, 19% company closed or furloughed. Here in the middle, you've got 34% working normally. So in essentially the lower classes, right, we see basically a third of all workers within those classes still working as if nothing happened. Okay?
Yeah.
You have barely anyone able to continue to work from home, and there are a lot of implications on like what that means and why. And you see how like status and class and labor are combined to make these kind of like these castes or these like socioeconomic groups and maintain them. Because what happened in a crisis? Did people's lives improve? Are the people in the lower class able to work from home and carry on? No. We see in the upper class, 39% of people are able to continue working from home. Imagine.
Mm.
And only 9% did their company close or they were furloughed. And we see a huge disparity in acute beds, in containment policies, mortality rates, all these sorts of things. So, and we'll get into this in our next episode, maybe. I don't want to keep going forever on this. And I'll wear everyone out. But the point here is largely that this crisis has been in the works since, I mean, in a lot of ways, you could make a case for since Iraq. Since we entered Iraq, you could say that was the terminal crisis that began this economic downfall. The implications of some of these things. You could say on a global scale. Certainly on a global scale, but also on a national level, you could say that the hyper-financialization of things that occurred in the late 70s, early 80s created this system where essentially NAFTA didn't help either, and just horrible trade policy and horrible labor policy. But how our productive capacity has been, because it's owned by private corporations and not nationalized and not owned by people, but by immortal private entities. Oh, so American workers want a living wage, so they move the productive capacity to country X, right? To China, to Taiwan, to wherever. Vietnam.
Country X exists.
Country X does exist. So does Planet X, and it's going to hit us eventually. Nibiru. No, that's not real. But the last thing I want to get into is what I'm talking about when we say this isn't an external thing that happened and that's like ruining this system. What happened is this system is ruining the goddamn world, and this thing is an effect of it. Like, it didn't necessarily create the virus, okay? That doesn't matter. What matters is the effects, okay? What matters is healthcare outcomes. What matters is supply chain stability, productive capacity, all these things.
The system wasn't able to handle that.
Exactly. And think about things like toilet paper, where that the productive capacity of that is mostly takes place within the country. and for a lot of us, like fairly close by, here in the Northeast, I believe a lot of it's harvested from trees around here. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, but regardless, like for the most part, we're not buying toilet paper made in China, blah blah blah. and how quickly that supply chain fell apart. Extrapolate that to all these things. Add on all these businesses, like Matt was talking about, trying to continue on, so they're loading themselves with debt, and they already have thin margins for the most part, and add that onto it. And what you're going to see is a cocktail for a goddamn mess. So as all these things begin to intersect, inequality, labor market issues, distribution issues, high precarious jobs, bad healthcare outcomes, no guaranteed housing, no guarantees of the necessities of life at all, we're going to see us move into not only greater precarity, but a need we're going to see underscored, very visibly, the need for these alternate systems of production and distribution. And so, again, how you can build them is by looking after your people. That's the keystone. That's the foundation. So do that. Find somebody you love, and maybe don't hug them. But yeah, blow them a kiss from like 10 feet away, maybe.
That's gain a little traction.
But and also take care of your community. Don't be this person that's like, well, I don't have to do A because I'm not in a risk category, or blah blah blah. And to a certain extent, it doesn't have to be, but to a certain extent, within this system we live within, certain things are a zero-sum game because of our supply chains, because of the ways in which we distribute goods, in which you can reproduce yourself. To some extent, the more you take, the less someone else can have, and the more vulnerable you already are, the harder it's going to be. And these things get pushed outwardly in orders of magnitude. So something we were talking about the other day, and I promise I will wrap this up, but my last thought here, and maybe this is how we'll start the next episode, is we've all been on, we've all had to get by on a week or months, not at a time, but we've all spent a lot of time maybe having, $20, $40 to spend on food for the week, right? Imagine doing that now. There's no
when
bread.
When the grocery store is empty.
There's no pasta.
You can't get pasta.
Exactly. Your choices are... Normally, your choices are limited by the amount, by how you can access them through a transaction, right?
Right. Yeah.
Now, add on to the fact that your choices are greatly reduced, and the fact that the things most people hoard during a crisis are the cheap, affordable things that last.
The canned goods and the pasta.
Exactly. So... Seriously, the best thing you can do is look after your people and your community, and do not hoard things. Take care of yourself, right? But you are not the only one. And this is how we begin to create positive change. And if we can just do that, I mean, it's going to be bad either way. And we'll talk about that next time. Maybe we'll jump on tomorrow. That's how you, if there's one positive thing, okay, it's that we are fully capable of doing that. And there's really no excuse not to take care of your people. So, final thoughts? Anybody?
Just, if you only do one thing tomorrow, just have that thing be to reach out to at least one person and see if they need help.
And watch our live stream and tell them to watch our live stream. Because we'll harass them about it for you. You can just be like, oh, that's fine that you want to hoard the toilet paper, Victoria. You know what? You should watch this show. Yeah. And then we'll yell at Victoria for you. Parker?
I got nothing.
I want to make like a motivational poster with you, like.
I
That's,
got no.
yeah, good. Sometimes nothing is exactly what you need. All right, be well, stay safe, and fucking solidarity, comrades. For the culture, language, and art of the worker podcast / live stream / experience. Take care.